Story 1. I used to work as a custodian at a middle school. Almost 10 years on the night shift. Clock in at 10 p.m. Clock out right before sunrise, just as the first buses start rolling in. At first, I liked it. The quiet didn't bother me. No students, no teachers, no chatter or chaos. Just silence. A kind of peace that only exists after midnight. But over time, that silence started to feel wrong. Like the building wasn't resting. It was listening. The school was old, built in the 1950s, and at night, it sounded alive. The vents breathed, the pipes groaned, and every creak of the floor made me jump. When you're the only one in a 3-story building after midnight, even a locker door popping, open by itself, feels like someone's whispering your name. Still, I got used to it, except for one place. The basement dotted stretched beneath half the school. A maze of concrete corridors, storage rooms, and old boiler systems. The lights flickered, the air always smelled like mildew, and the ceiling hung low with pipes that dripped just enough to make you flinch. No one liked going down there. When I first started, one of the older custodians pulled me aside and said, gruff imitation, "Don't go in that basement unless you have to. Ain't worth it." He laughed, called it haunted. I laughed too. But I stopped laughing the first night I saw it. Most nights, I avoided that door completely. Even walking past, it gave me chills. But one night, maybe 6 years in, I didn't have a choice. My supervisor left a note on my cart. Bring up folding chairs for tomorrow's assembly. And I already knew where they were stored. The basement. I stood at the top of the stairwell for a long time, staring at that heavy door. It always looked darker than the rest of the hallway, like the light never touched it. But I didn't want to seem lazy, so I took a breath, grabbed my flashlight, and pushed it open. The door groaned like something waking up. Each step I took echoed too loud, like the building was aware of me again. Half the lights down there didn't work, so my flashlight became my lifeline. The air hit me right away, thick, damp, and cold. The chairs were supposed to be in the second storage room on the left. The first was filled floor to ceiling with old desks. The second was where I stopped. The metal door squealed as I opened it, the smell of dust and wood polish stinging my nose. The folding chairs were stacked neatly in uneven piles against the wall. I bent down, grabbed a few, and that's when I froze, beat, somewhere out in the hallway. A sound, a soft, dragging noise, like someone slowly sliding their shoe across concrete. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The sound stopped. I peeked my head out of the room, flashlight shaking in my hand. Nothing, just that endless dark hallway, swallowing up the light. I told myself it was the pipes, or maybe one of the chairs shifting behind me. But my heart wouldn't stop pounding. I carried the chairs toward the stairs, my boots echoing louder than ever. Then a cold draft brushed across my face, and I mean cold, like freezer air. That shouldn't even be possible in that sealed basement. I turned the light around. Nothing. I dropped the first load near the stairs and went back. But when I walked into that storage room again, something was off. The stack of chairs looked different, shifted somehow. I stared for a few seconds, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. I picked up another load, and that's when I heard it again. A thump, followed by a dragging shuffle dot. It came from farther down the hallway. I turned the flashlight, and about 30 feet away, one of the classroom doors was cracked open. That door was always locked. My stomach dropped. I hadn't gone near it. No one was supposed to be there. I stood frozen in the doorway, whispering to myself. Maybe air pressure shifted the latch. It was the kind of lie you tell yourself to survive the moment. I put the chairs down, grabbed the flashlight with both hands, and called out, "Hello? Anyone down here?" My voice echoed, then vanished. No answer. I took one cautious step forward, then another. The cracked door loomed in my light. I pushed it open fast. Empty, just old boxes, broken equipment, spiderwebs hanging from the ceiling. I exhaled. My laugh came out shaky. Then, a sound from behind me. Beat, the same dragging shuffle. Closer this time. I spun around, flashlight trembling, the beam slicing through dust. No one, but I could feel it. That pressure. That unmistakable feeling of being watched. I started backing up toward the stairs, light still aimed down the corridor. The darkness looked heavier somehow, like it was hiding something. I didn't even care about the chairs anymore. I grabbed what I could and climbed 2 steps at a time, lungs burning. When I burst back into the main hallway upstairs, I locked that basement door behind me, even though I wasn't supposed to. I never went down there alone again. Pause. Quieter tone. A week later, I was mopping the hallway right above the basement stairs when it happened again. 3 loud bangs, evenly spaced. Like someone hitting the wall from the other side. The mop slipped out of my hand, water splashing across the floor. Then, the door handle rattled, violently, like someone was trying to open it. I froze. Didn't breathe. Didn't move. After a few seconds, silence, and then nothing. I left the mop where it fell and walked away. Didn't look back. After that night, I refused to go down there again. If the job required it, I'd wait for another custodian to come in early. People used to joke that the basement was haunted. Maybe it was, or maybe something was living down there. All I know is that sometimes, even years later, I still hear it. That slow, dragging sound in my head. And when I pass by an old, flickering hallway, that same chill crawls up my spine. Because some buildings never forget who walk their halls after dark. Story 2. My name's Eric. For almost 5 years, I worked as a custodian at a high school. Not the kind of glamorous job people dream about, but it paid the bills. And for the most part, I didn't mind it. Especially at night. I was the newest guy on the team, so I always got the graveyard shifts, from 10 p.m. till sunrise. While most people were asleep, I'd be roaming 4 floors of empty hallways, turning off lights, locking doors, and sweeping floors that no one would see until morning. The silence used to feel peaceful. Until at DIDN T. At night, that building felt different. The walls seemed to breathe. Every little noise, a pipe clicking, a locker door shifting, sounded like footsteps right behind you. But after a few weeks, I got used to it. Mostly. Then came the night that made me quit. It was a Friday, close to midnight. I was working alone because my partner had called out sick. Normally, there were always 2 of us on duty, but not that night. The hallways stretched out in front of me, long, empty, echoing corridors under flickering fluorescent lights. I started on the first floor, emptying trash cans, wiping tables, mopping as usual. Then I moved to the 3rd floor, the one that everyone hated. Even during the day, it had this heavy stillness to it. Most of the classrooms up there hadn't been used in years. Old desks stacked in corners, cabinets full of dusty textbooks, Lab tables scarred with names carved decades ago. The further you walked, the quieter it got. The air was thick, still and cold. I was halfway through mopping when I noticed something strange. Down the hallway, about 30 feet away, a door was slightly open. Now, that immediately threw me off. I had already checked that hallway earlier, and every single door had been locked. I stood there for a second, staring at the thin line of darkness between the door and the frame. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself maybe one of the teachers had forgotten to close it earlier. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it felt. It wasn't just open. It looked like someone was standing behind it. I swallowed hard, grabbed my flashlight, and walked toward it. My boots echoed with every step. The door was one of those old wooden ones with a square glass window near the top. I pushed it open slowly, shining my light around the room. Empty. Stacks of desks lined the walls, boxes piled in the corners. Everything looked normal, except one thing. A box near the back wall had been moved. It was tilted out of line, and the scuff marks on the floor showed it had been dragged recently. I knew I hadn't touched it, and no one else should have been there. I pulled the door shut, maybe a little too fast, and went back to mopping. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. 10 minutes later, I passed by that same classroom again, and the door was wide open. My stomach dropped. I stopped dead in the hallway, gripping my flashlight so tight my knuckles turned white. I whispered, "Hello? Who's in there?" No answer. The silence pressed down like a weight. I stepped closer. From the back of the room came a sound. Breathing. Slow, deep, deliberate breathing, like someone trying to stay quiet but wanting me to know they were there. That's when I panicked. I slammed the door shut, ran to the stairwell, and locked myself inside. My heart was racing so fast, I thought I'd pass out. After a few seconds, I called my supervisor. I tried to explain, but I must have sounded crazy. He said he'd be there in 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes felt like hours. When he finally arrived, we went back up together. He had a heavy flashlight and pushed the door open without hesitation. The room was empty. The box was still there, now in the middle of the floor. We searched every corner. Nothing. He laughed it off. Sighed maybe I'd been working too many nights. But I knew what I'd heard. That breathing wasn't in my head. For the rest of that shift, I couldn't focus. Every flicker of a light, every creak in the ceiling made me flinch. And when I passed that same door later in the night, I could have sworn it was slightly ajar again, just enough to show the darkness inside. Weeks later, another custodian told me something that still chills me. Years ago, a student had been caught hiding overnight in that same room. He was pulling a prank, but the staff was so shaken, they sealed the room off for months. No one used it after that. That story explained the rumors. But it didn't explain the breathing. Or the box that moved on its own. After that night, I refused to clean that floor alone again. If my schedule said 3rd floor, I switched with someone else. Every time I passed that hallway, I felt it. That same invisible weight, like eyes watching from the dark. And even now, years later, sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear it. That slow, deep breathing, coming from a classroom that should have been empty. Story 3. I worked as a night custodian at an old high school for a few years. The pay wasn't great, but the silence was. At least, that's what I thought, until I started cleaning the auditorium. The building itself was ancient, 4 floors, endless hallways, pipes that groaned louder than thunder, and lights that flickered like they were on their last breath. But the auditorium, that place was different. It was massive. 3 levels of seating, a wide stage, and thick velvet curtains that swallowed light. During the day, it looked perfectly normal. But at night, it didn't feel like a room anymore. It felt alive. Even with all the lights on, the shadows in the corners never disappeared. The air was heavy, like it was holding its breath. If you dropped a broom, the echo would twist and stretch until it felt like it came from everywhere and nowhere. Most nights, I saved that place for last. Because once I went in, I didn't want to go back. It was near the end of winter, a little past midnight, when I had to clean the auditorium earlier than usual. There was a school play the next morning, and the director wanted it spotless. I remember dragging my cart across the tiled floor, the wheels squeaking as I pushed through the side door. The heavy metal hinge creaked, and when it slammed shut behind me, the echo bounced across the room like it would never stop. I turned on the lights. The rows of seats glowed faintly under the fluorescent helm. Still, shadows lingered, especially up on the balcony. I hated how quiet it was. Even my own footsteps felt too loud. I started sweeping between the aisles. The broom scraped against the old floor, and the sound carried forever. I focused on the motion, trying not to think about the darkness beyond the stage. Then I heard it. A faint rustle, coming from the stage itself. I froze. For a moment, I told myself it was a prop falling over, maybe the wind moving one of the curtains. But when I looked up, the curtains were still. Nothing moved. I stood there, broom in hand, waiting. Silence. So I kept sweeping. A few minutes later, I heard it again, this time clearer. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Across the stage. My chest tightened. I turned toward the sound, every muscle locked. The stage was empty, or at least, it looked that way. But the sound had been real. I swallowed hard and climbed the steps, my flashlight trembling in my hand. Behind the curtains were ropes, old painted sets, and piles of wooden chairs. Dust floated in the beam of my light like falling snow. There was no one there. Still, I couldn't shake that feeling, the one that told me someone was close, watching. I backed down off the stage, forcing myself to breathe. It's just the building, I thought. Old wood expands. Air vents shift. That's all it is. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept working, trying to finish quickly. The sooner I got out, the better. But when I looked up toward the second tier of seats, I thought I saw movement. A shadow. Just a flicker. There and gone. My heart jumped. I raised the flashlight and scanned the balcony, but there was nothing there. Empty rows of seats stared back at me. I tried to laugh it off. Get a grip, I whispered to myself. I went back to mopping the main floor. The mop sloshed through the bucket, the sound echoing louder than it should have. That's when I heard it again, not footsteps this time. A whisper. It was low and soft, coming from above me. The balcony. At first, I thought I was hearing things. But the whispering kept going, faint, steady, and almost like it was moving closer. I stopped mopping and listened. My own heartbeat was so loud I could barely hear over it. Then, between breaths, I caught it. My name. Someone whispered my name. I spun around, shining the flashlight in every direction. The room looked empty, but that didn't stop the terror rising in my chest. "Who's up there?" I shouted. The sound of my own voice came back to me in layers, echoing in the emptiness. No answer. I forced myself to finish the job. Every movement felt heavy. When I climbed the stage steps again, I couldn't help but glance over the edge toward the seats. They looked endless, rows and rows fading into the dark. When my flashlight swept over the balcony, I froze. Someone was sitting there. Or at least, it looked like someone, a silhouette, perfectly still. I blinked, and it was gone. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I told myself it had to be a trick of the light, a coat, a shadow, anything but a person. But the longer I stood there, the more I felt that presence, just beyond sight, waiting, and I heard it again. The whisper. This time, right behind me. It said my name. I spun around so fast, the flashlight slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. The sound echoed like thunder through the auditorium. When I picked it up and aimed it at the stage, nothing. Just the curtains. Still, silent, but I could feel it. The cold breath of air, the weight of eyes on my back. That's when I ran. I bolted off the stage and toward the side door. Halfway there, I heard the footsteps again, slow, steady, pacing above me on the upper level. Click, click, click. They followed me all the way to the door. When I yanked it open, the night air hit me like ice. I stumbled out, breathing hard, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped the keys. Even outside, I could still hear it, those faint footsteps fading away. I locked the door and stood there in the cold, staring through the glass. The lights flickered once and went still. The next morning, I told one of the other custodians what happened. He laughed it off, said, "Old building like that? You're lucky it didn't fall apart while you were in it." But later that week, one of the teachers told me a story. Years ago, during a rehearsal, the drama teacher collapsed right there on the stage. Heart attack. He died in front of the students before the paramedics even arrived. They said that sometimes, late at night, if you were quiet enough, you could still hear him pacing the balcony, or whispering lines from old plays into the dark. I tried to tell myself it was just a story,